Hey guys, and welcome to Autumn Lee at Home. I'm Autumn Lee, and today I'm going to share with you guys a family dinner that I grew up eating, as well as learn a new loaf of bread that's a cinnamon twist loaf that I think you guys would really like, and I know my kids are going to love it. So I'm excited to try that new recipe, as well as make a family favorite that is homemade yeast rolls. So please follow along with me as we get started. Okay. So I remembered my apron this time. I am notorious for getting things all over my shirt. So hopefully this will help and I won't ruin any more shirts. We're gonna start with our cinnamon twist bread, and I went ahead and got my warm water. So it calls for 1 cup of warm water, and we're gonna need to let the yeast and warm water proof. So I have my warm water here, and afterwards I'm gonna be using my mixer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and try to save myself the hassle of cleaning an extra bowl and use my mixer bowl. And then it's gonna call for 1/2 a teaspoon of dry yeast. Next to this mixture, we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of sugar. Ooh, it's heavier than I thought. I almost dropped it. All right, so now we need to let this mixture proof for about 10 minutes. That way we can activate the yeast and let it start rising. What you want to see is for the yeast to be a little bit bubbly on top. I've had my yeast for a little while, so I'm kind of curious if it's going to work or not, but we will be checking that momentarily. Okay, so I actually, one of the tricks that I use to help my mixture rise and proof, or not rise, but proof, I heat up my microwave. I turn it on with nothing in it for like 5 to 10 seconds. And then I put my mixture in the microwave because we keep our house pretty cool. We like it cold in our house. And so it makes it harder for things to proof or rise. And so to help this rise and activate the yeast, I went ahead and did that. So my bowl is currently in the microwave, and I'm just gonna let it stay there for about 10 minutes to let the yeast activate. In the meantime, while that's proofing, proofing. While that's proofing, I'm gonna go ahead and put this stuff away and get started on my dry ingredients. It calls for 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of salt. Let me double check that one. Yes, 1 teaspoon of salt. I just wanted to double check on the recipe. So it calls for 1 teaspoon of salt and 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So let me go ahead and grab those as well. Okay, so our proofing is finished, and you can kind of see the bubbles there on top. It didn't rise a whole lot. A lot of times you'll see it kind of foamy on top. So this isn't super encouraging, but we're gonna go with it and see what happens, because I remember I did this with pizza dough recently, and it still turned out fantastic. So we're gonna try it and see what happens. If not, then we'll know my yeast is not good. But for now, we're gonna add the salt, which is 1 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to add 2.5 cups of flour, all-purpose flour. I'm gonna put this on the mixer and get it started mixing, and we're gonna knead it for about 7 minutes or so. And I'm gonna see what it looks like after 7 minutes. It did pretty good. So we're gonna go ahead and take this, and I'm going to cover it drizzle it with a little bit of oil and cover it with a little bit of oil so it doesn't dry out. And then we need to let it proof. So I'm gonna let it proof for at least an hour, but I don't want it to dry out. So I'm gonna cover it with a little oil and then a little saran wrap, and then try to find a warm place in my house to put it. I turned my oven on to try to get the stove a little warmer, and so I'm gonna try there and see how it does. But we want it to try to double in size. And while this is proofing, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on my casserole dish. That's the warm, cozy dinner that I grew up on, and every time I've ever cooked it, everybody loves it. So it calls for saffron rice or yellow rice. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook that and get started on that while this is proofing, and not proofing, rising. This is olive oil that's in here, and we usually use this for our air fryer, but it actually is gonna work great for this too. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little squirt and kind of rub the olive oil around over the dough. So it gives it kind of that glossy look to it. And then that way it helps it from drying out. So, and then cover it with saran wrap. All right, here's my 4 cups of water. So whatever rice you get, whether it's this rice, I got these from Aldi, or a different saffron rice or yellow rice, just follow the instructions on the rice and go ahead and cook the rice just how you normally would cook it from the instructions that are given. And then after that, I'll show you what we use to mix up with the casserole. All right, our rice is finished. It's nice and fluffy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a bowl to mix my ingredients, but you can mix your ingredients in the casserole dish if you really wanna save on having to wash an extra dish. But I just wanna make sure that I get my ingredients to the right consistency that I want. So what you're gonna need is the saffron rice or cooked yellow rice or saffron rice. So we'll go ahead and pour that in first. Okay, I have my rice. Now the recipe calls for 1 can of cream of chicken and 1 can of cream of celery. You can home make your cream of chicken if you want to. I'm gonna cheat today. And I'm also, just because this is the recipe that I grew up eating and I don't want to change the flavor of it because I just really liked how it was growing up. But if you want to, then you can use grilled chicken instead of canned chicken. But again, this is what I grew up with, so this is what I'm gonna use. But I'm gonna use drained canned chicken as well as cream of chicken, and I didn't have cream of celery, so I'm just gonna substitute for 2 cans of cream of chickens. So I'm gonna substitute for that. Now, I will be the first to say that this is not the healthiest dish. However, it's a very easy throw in a pot, throw together meal for a busy night that is very filling and a wonderful fall meal. So if you're looking for a cozy fall dinner, this is the way to go. It's very filling and it's very tasty. This is Lucy. She's gonna be my little helper today. Can you wave and say hi? If you have little helpers, if you angle their hand this way to have them help stir, it prevents them from slinging the spoon on accident. Good job, Lucy. All right, so I drained 1 can of chicken and I'm just gonna add this. It looks gross, but I promise it tastes fantastic once it's cooked. I'm just gonna add 1 can for now. I may end up adding 2 cans, depending on what it looks like. And then I also take evaporated milk, and I'm going to use this to make the consistency that I want. So again, that's to taste for you guys. If you like it creamier, then that's what this helps with. If you like it kind of drier, then that would be, you would use less of this. So I'm gonna add this as well as poppy seeds, and you can just do a few sprinkles on top if you want. This is the condensed milk. Get it in there. There we go. Are you gonna mix it? Here, hold it like that. There you go. And then hold this hand right here on the bowl so it doesn't move. You got it? So I ended up only using 1 can of chicken, and I think it looks great with just 1 can. And then I didn't use as many poppy seeds as I thought I would need. So I would say maybe a few sprinkles to about ½ a teaspoon of poppy seeds, depending on taste and what you like. And then I only used a little bit of evaporated milk, and so it looks great. So I'm gonna spray this pan, which you don't have to do, but it just makes me feel better, like it's not gonna stick as bad, and it'll make it a little easier to clean off later. And then you pour it into your pan. Got it all, and then you're just gonna spread it in the pan until it's mixed or spread out evenly throughout the pan. Next is the easiest part. This is the easiest dish, the easiest dinner to do on a quick night when you just want something hearty and warm and cozy. All I have to do next is sprinkle breadcrumbs on top and then put little pats of butter over the top and then stick it in the oven. Because everything's pretty much already cooked, you're just wanting to warm it up. So what I'm gonna do, since I'm making dinner ahead of time, I was hoping to make Dinner+One, but I think this is just gonna be dinner. I didn't end up making enough. I should have bought more rice, and then it would have been good. But that's okay. You can make this into a Dinner+One. Just make sure you kind of double your ingredients, and which I did not do, and make it that way. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop right here because my kids, we're not ready to eat dinner yet. My kids are still at school. I'm making this early, and that way I don't have to worry about it later, because later I'm hoping to make yeast rolls with my kids. I'm saving that for when they get home. I'm saving that for when they get home because they love helping make the yeast rolls and rolling them out. And I want them to be able to have a chance to do that. So I'm going to put this in the, wrap it up, put it in the fridge for now. And I'm not putting the breadcrumbs or butter on yet. I will do that right before I stick it in the oven later tonight, which I will show you later as well. So we're gonna stop here and change back to our twisted cinnamon loaf. All right, so that looks like it's about doubled in size. Okay, so I have my spatula and I'm just going to take the softened butter and try to spread it around on here. Now I melted about a stick of butter, or not melted, but softened about a stick of butter. I don't think we're gonna need quite that much. So I have it in about a rectangle and I'm getting butter on there. I don't want it completely globbed on, but you do want it, you know, a decent amount, because that's what's gonna help the brown sugar and give it the flavor with the brown sugar and cinnamon. Okay, now that I have my butter on, and I would say I used about half a stick of butter, but again, that's also to taste. You can add less or more butter if you need to. Now I'm going to spread my brown sugar on, and I may have to kind of spread it out by hand a little bit here in a moment. So it's kind of going to be similar to a big cinnamon roll. This is our brown sugar.
I like that one.
I know you like that one. So hopefully I didn't add too much brown sugar, but we're going to see what that turns out like. And then you're going to take your cinnamon in that way and just kind of sprinkle it over the top. And then we're gonna take it, and you're supposed to roll it really tight. So thank you, Lucy. Our goal is gonna be to try to roll it as tight as we can. Thank you, good girl. This is our brown sugar mixture. There we go. Wow, that looks pretty. So we have it all rolled up, and I'm going to, what we're supposed to do is let it proof again for 20 minutes, but we need to braid it first, and then we need to cover it so that it doesn't dry out. So what I'm gonna do is, you're supposed to leave an inch up here that uncut, and then the other rest of it, you're supposed to cut all the way down, all the way through and all the way down, which I left 1 inch uncut. Now that we've cut all the way down with leaving an inch there, you're supposed to take the ends, and this is the messy part. Oop, I don't think I got all the way down. Hopefully I'm not making extra work for myself by cutting too much. Yeah. Okay, and we're supposed to, let me separate them first. This is the messy part that gets a little tricky. And I'm going to braid it with the open sides up, is what we're supposed to do. Oh my goodness, the cinnamon and brown sugar smell fantastic. Ooh, that looks so yummy. Okay. So that was a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be really messy, which it was messy, but it wasn't as bad. So I braided it, and now we're gonna let it rise for another 20 minutes. And in this time, I'm gonna go get my kids, but I don't want this to dry out while I'm gone. So I'm gonna take saran wrap and try to wrap this. That way it can stay moist and go ahead and rise while we're gone. Okay, so we are back from school, and so I am going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 350 degrees now that my bread has risen a little bit. While the oven is preheating 350, I'm going to go ahead and put an egg wash. I took one egg, scrambled it, mixed a little bit of water in it, and scrambled it some more, and then you're just going to brush it gently across the surface of the loaf. And then once this is finished and my oven is preheated, I'm going to put this loaf in the oven for at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. And then the instructions say to raise the temperature after 20 minutes to 425 degrees for 5 to 7 minutes or until lightly browned. Now, I set a timer for 5 minutes, and that was kind of a mistake of mine. I should have set a timer for like a minute or two because mine ended up getting a little burnt on top. It still tasted great, but I would recommend maybe watching it after, watching it very closely after you raise the temperature to 425 degrees. Now that our cinnamon twist loaf is finished, we're going to go ahead and get started on the yeast rolls that are made from scratch that my kids love to help with. So to get started, I took a half a cup of water and a cup of milk, and you need to warm that up to about 110 degrees. I just put my finger in it. I don't typically get a thermometer out. You don't want it too hot because it will burn the yeast, but go ahead and make sure that it's warm to touch. And then you're going to get 2 tablespoons of honey, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and 1 tablespoon of dry active yeast. Once you have all of these ingredients in your bowl or measuring cup or whatever it is that you're using, go ahead and gently mix them together. That way they can the honey and the butter all gets mixed in together with the yeast, so you're not having to do that later. And then I take it and put it back in the microwave that I just used to melt the butter, not to turn the microwave on again, but because the microwave is warm and my house is cold, it gives it a warm place to kind of warm up. So you want it to warm and proof there for about 10 minutes. And I usually set a timer. And while that's happening, I'm going ahead and mixing my dry ingredients. And for the dry ingredients, I went ahead and put them in the mixing bowl. And I used 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour and 1 teaspoon of salt. Now, you keep another half a cup of all-purpose flour set aside, and if your dough appears to be too wet, then that's when you want to add a little bit more flour. This is what the yeast looks like. It's all bubbly on top, and you can see it kind of foamy a little bit on top. That's looking very pretty. So we're going to go ahead and add that to the dry ingredients in the mixing bowl after 10 minutes of proofing is up, and we'll get to see what it looks like mixing. Eventually you'll see it start pulling away from the edges, and that's how you know it's getting pretty good and it's ready, about to be ready. Now you want to give it kind of like the little touch test and make sure it's not too wet. And if it's too wet, then you want to add a little bit more of that other half of a cup of flour, of the all-purpose flour. That's good. It's still sticky, but that's okay. I would rather mine be a little too wet than too dry, especially because when the kids are helping me roll them out, they love to add flour, and I always have to remind them, don't add too much or it dries it out. So I purposely let mine stay a little extra sticky because I know it's going to get more flour added to it later. But this is about what it looks like, and I'm going to sit this over and let it rise after I've kind of made it into a ball. I'm going to cover it and let it rise again for 15 minutes, and then it's time to punch it down, which is the fun part, and then I get to take it out and cut it into different pieces. Now, you can cut it into as small of pieces as you want, just however big you cut it, that's about the size that it's going to be for, it affects the size that it's going to be for the yeast roll. I usually aim for about 12 cuts and 12 rolls. That way, that's about what this recipe makes. I think I ended up with 11 this time, but that's fine. There's no perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. But this is the part where the kids get to pat them out and roll them. And I'm here, take the time to try to teach them how to roll the yeast roll. So what you really want to do is, if you watch my hands, you want to kind of take the yeast roll and pull up the edges and spin and pull up at the same time on all sides and kind of pinch it at the top. And then you want to roll it into a ball like my son showed you. And that's ideal. However, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. The fun part for them is just getting to play with the dough and hands-on. So here are the finished rolls. And now I want to take a damp washcloth. So I usually take a paper towel, a damp paper towel, and put them over the yeast rolls. And that way it keeps them from drying out. And I set them on the stove and let them rise for another 25 to 30 minutes while the oven is preheating. And I take this time to go ahead and try to clean all of that flour up. While the rolls are rising, I went ahead and preheated the oven, or I'm preheating the oven to 400 degrees for the rolls. And I go ahead and take the time to get the casserole dish out of the refrigerator so that it can start warming up to room temperature. Because I had put it in there before I went to go get my kids. So now I'm just sprinkling the breadcrumbs over the top and just kind of gently sprinkling the top. And then I'm getting a stick of butter and I'm just taking little pats of butter and placing them randomly over the top as well so that the butter can melt. Now, about halfway through this casserole warming up, I did decide to take some melted butter because those pats of butter for some reason didn't melt super well. So I did take some melted butter and drizzle it over the top as well. This casserole is already cooked, so really all we're trying to do is warm it up. It's been 25 minutes and these have risen beautifully. So I'm going to go ahead and take an egg wash where I scrambled a little bit of water with an egg and gently brushed the surface of the dough. This is what gives it that beautiful brown color on top. And I'm so excited about these because this is one of my favorites and my family's favorite things to eat. Now that we're finished putting the egg wash on, it is time to stick them in the oven. And again, the oven's at 400 degrees and we're gonna put these in for about 15 to 20 minutes. I would definitely watch them though, because my oven tends to cook a little faster than this time recommends. So I usually set a timer for about 13 minutes and start watching them closely afterwards. Next, we're going to get started on our vegetable, and I decided to just take 2 heads of broccoli and cut them up into pieces that are all about the same size, and then I'm just going to oil them and salt and pepper them to taste. Now, something that I would recommend doing, I did not do it this night, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take my side of vegetable and I'll actually let them eat that while I'm finishing dinner. And that gets them to, because they're always hungry, they're always asking when dinner's ready, and this gives them a chance to eat something while I'm finishing, but also it strongly encourages them to eat their vegetables. So it works like a charm. They usually end up finishing the vegetable before I even get dinner ready, which I'm completely fine with because I'd rather them fill up on vegetables than the bready stuff anyway. However, I know they're going to enjoy this meal and they all ended up finishing about the same time because I ended up deciding to put the broccoli in at the same time as the casserole just to warm everything up together. So here I sprayed the parchment paper with a little bit of Pam so it doesn't stick. The broccoli heads don't stick to the top. And then I'm just spreading them out evenly over in one layer. And then I'm going to put them in the oven at 375 degrees. And I'll put these on the top row because I want them to get a little bit browned, whereas the casserole I stuck underneath because I just want it to get warmed up. And I put both of these in for about 25 minutes or so is when I started watching them. And the broccoli, you just want them lightly toasted and brown. The casserole, you just want it heated up all the way through. Once it's heated up all the way through, they are ready. And so here is our finished dinner. It's the end of the day, and I just wanted to take the time to say thank you so much for joining me here at Autumnly at Home. We were able to make a cozy fall dinner for the family that you could turn into a Dinner+One meal. I hope you enjoyed it, and please like, subscribe, and share, and I hope to see you guys next time.